migrated their way around the planet. Okay? All right, let's take a closer look at this. Instead of just looking at a few individuals, let's look at a bunch of different individuals. So we have some individuals from Africa and individuals from a bunch of different parts of the world, everywhere from Australia to Italy to Samoa, Korea, Japan, the Siberian Inuit population, right? Let's just grab people from all over the world, look at sequences that are in common among all these humans, which should be all of them. Pick a particular sequence. In this case, it's mitochondrial DNA sequences because they don't cross over, no recombination. And look at how similar everybody is. And notice how this groups. We have a grouping here, which would be for an African population. That's a clade. There's another African clade, and a third African clade, and a fourth African clade at the top, whereas only two non-African clades, and the origin of all of those is about 52,000 years ago, whereas the origin of all of the humans is still around 170,000 years ago. Okay, so this is consistent with this. Individuals started in Africa, and from there, they started moving all over the world. Okay? Okay. Another tree built, this time instead of using mitochondrial DNA, we're using a portion of the genome called the microsatellite DNA that is not involved in coding. It would be that kind of intergenic stuff that we talked about before. Shouldn't be under selection. Build another phylogenetic tree here, and same thing, we're seeing that humans are coming together here, and that Africa versus non-Africa is the most fundamental subdivision. That's Africa, non-Africa, but that they all come together at some point, indicating that there's a common ancestor for everybody. Okay? All right, now what we're going to do is look at the genetic diversity at a single locus. So that single locus, let's say, is a gene, and there should be multiple alleles for this gene. Any individual could have up to 2 of them, but the population at large could have a whole lot more than this. Right? There could be 50 or 60 alleles for this same gene. It's just that any individual can only have 2 of them. So if we look in the New World, we have the alleles numbered 4 through 15. Right? So we're looking at 15, 12. This is 12 alleles here. And we're asking who has these 12 alleles. Well, if you look at the New World at the top, those individuals there have a lot of allele 5, a little bit of allele 6, a lot of 10, and a little bit of 11. The Pacific Island and the Australo-Melanesian population has a tremendous amount of 5 and 10, some 6, 9, and 11. Asian populations, a lot of 5 and 10, some 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12. The European population, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. Middle Eastern, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The Sub-Saharan, that's African population. And this last one here at the bottom is, the Sub-Saharan African population here is this last one. This is Northeast African. But if you look, the African population has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. These populations all have a subset of all of these alleles that occur in Africa, which is consistent with this. The set of alleles present in Asia and Europe are subsets of those in Africa. Asia and Europe, subsets of the ones that occur in Africa. Okay? This leads us to the current kind of thinking that humans evolved in one place, that is Homo sapien evolved in Africa. Then there were migrations out of Africa. So I don't know if I can draw this Africa here. This would be Europe here. There are some big mountains in Europe. Those would be the Alps. And then we have India, and over here in the Southeast Asia and Australia. Okay, this is India. India has some mountains here. That's the Himalayas. And then this is Australia. And then over here would be Alaska on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. So the current thinking about how all this went down was humans start in Africa. Some individuals stay there and others begin this migration. They hit the Alps and they head down along the coast, India, and then along to Southeast Asia and down into Australia. It's like the first movement, major migration of humans. And the timeline that is present based on DNA evidence matches up pretty well with the archaeological evidence, right? Pottery, etc. Then you had kind of a second migration that comes out where individuals come up and they head to the left of the Alps, which takes you into Europe. There's another migration that goes in this direction, and this migration ultimately makes the trip across the Bering Strait to Alaska, to North America, and then to South America. Right? Last thing, this question of hybridization and assimilation versus African replacement. People feel pretty comfortable that the multi-regional hypothesis is incorrect. Humans did not simultaneously evolve in multiple places. Humans evolved in Africa and then migrated from there. The next question is, what happens to this Neanderthal DNA? Is it basically a dead lineage, or was there some hybridization and assimilation between Neanderthals and human, such that introgression is what made the Neanderthals disappear, but humans still carry around a little bit of Neanderthal DNA? And in the last few years, there have been lots of papers out there on Neanderthal sequences being found in humans. Right? There's a lot of like hair and skin alleles, the ones that code for proteins in our hair and skin that seem to be based in Neanderthal. And there are certain populations in Europe, in particular those in the Baltic states, that seem to have a lot more Neanderthal DNA than the rest of the population of the world, which suggests, as humans began moving around, there was perhaps some hybridization with local groups of Neanderthals, and maybe in other parts of the world there was less of that going on because there weren't any Neanderthals. Okay? All right. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and start into the photosynthesis material. We'll do a little bit more with plants, but as for the ecology and evolution stuff, we've basically completed it. Now what's left for us to do is tie up a little bit of plant material that's the majority of which is molecular. That would be the photosynthesis stuff, talking about how plants are able to take the energy of the sun and manufacture biological molecules. So I'll go ahead and call it a day here, and I'll see you next time. Take care.